Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. We are looking at the 8-hour chart of silver. I've drawn a couple of trend lines and we've got the MACD down below. Normally when you draw a trend line, you draw it from the lows. The reason I didn't do that on this one is because we have so many confirmation points on this trend line, so I drew it the way I did. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 confirmation points on this trend line. So it's a very strong trend line. It's I consider this an anomaly, but you can see from this trend line, especially with the crossing of the MACD that we have right now, that the silver bull market is still intact. Now, a lot of people have complained about silver, why it's not keeping up with gold. I think we're nearing the point where silver is going to do a rapid catch-up with gold. That's just my prediction, but we'll wait and see if that's the case. Silver is still, if we go to the NetDania site and pull up the quote list, you can see that silver is still on a very strong course for the year. Going to pull up the percentage returns for the year, and silver is one of those markets that it's really only covered by the powers that be when it's weak. They don't really like to talk about it when it's strong. It's not exceptionally strong right now, but if we look at our yearly stats, we can see that silver's up roughly 35% for the year, gold's up 28 point something percent. The rest of these are, the anomalous ones are the US dollar dropping against the Swiss franc, the British pound dropping against the Swiss franc, and so they're basically currencies against the Swiss franc. Everything else is just a single digit move for the year, except for gold and silver, who are both returning excellent returns for the year. You have to remember we still have 5 months left in the year, and both of these are up by large amounts for a yearly return. We'd actually have to have a tremendous crash at this point to get back to the 0 point, which I don't think that we're going to get. So I think that silver is going to continue higher. I don't see anything in this chart that indicates it's not going to continue higher. And this final line I've drawn here is what I consider to be a key support and resistance line. It's right in the middle of this congestion area, and it's also a relative top of this failure area, and now it appears to be forming a bottom of this support area. So my expectation is that we'll probably break out from this flag to the upside and ultimately form some kind of cup that goes up here and breaks out. That's my expectation. I wanted to take you over to, first I wanted to look at an article that's in the news right now about jobs, and jobs are a big topic that is coming up with the Congress and related to the stimulus we've already done. And there's a number of articles coming out about jobs and how the Congress can create more jobs. And you can see in this article that Obama's Jobs Council is calling for more engineers, so they announce a 6,300 new internships. And we've got Dr. Stephen Chu, the Secretary of Energy, who's calling for more of these internships. And basically it amounts to blaming Americans for there not being jobs. We need engineers and we need scientists. So they're still pursuing the course that they pursued before, thinking this, which is a complete myth, that the government can create jobs. The government can't create jobs. The government can misallocate resources by forcing money into an area that the market is not calling for. That's not creating jobs. That's just destroying jobs by taking money from one area of the economy and forcing it into another. And I think that's fairly well demonstrated by the story that was on Zero Hedge today called "The Shining Example of Obama's $787 billion Fiscal Stimulus Act. Solar energy company Solyndra files for bankruptcy." So I wanted to play you this video that's shared on this site, and then we'll look at the story real quick.
Good evening. President Obama used his time in the Bay Area to highlight the need for alternative fuels. Of course, that's in the wake of the Gulf oil disaster.
Now, the president spent today in Fremont visiting a solar manufacturing plant built with federal stimulus money, and that's Marine One, a helicopter that flew from San Francisco to Fremont today, passing the Golden Gate Bridge and missing the morning commute on the ground. And by the way, a viewer sent us this U-Report picture of Marine One's landing at the NUMMI plant parking lot. Our political reporter Mark Mathis joins us now with the president's promise of green jobs. Mark?
More than a promise, Cheryl. At the Solyndra Fremont plant, they have hired 3,000 construction workers to build a 300,000 square foot manufacturing plant with another one like it on the drawing board. President Obama toured Solyndra's main manufacturing plant in Fremont, the company's CEO showing off the tubular design of Solyndra's distinctive solar panels. The president shook hands with plant workers and got his picture taken with some of the construction workers that were idled today because of security concerns. He then walked into the new facility that is being built largely with $535 million in federal loan guarantees.
When it's completed in a few months, Solyndra expects to hire 1,000 workers to manufacture solar panels and sell them across America and around the world.
The president said it's only the beginning.
And that's why I'm going to keep fighting to pass comprehensive energy and climate legislation in Washington. We're going to try to get it done this year.
He told the invited audience of Solyndra employees and public officials that the oil spill in the Gulf underscores the necessity of seeking alternative energy sources.
Our thoughts and prayers are very much with the people along the Gulf Coast. And let me reiterate, we will not rest until this well is shut, the environment is repaired, and the cleanup is complete.
The president plans to visit the Gulf Coast on Friday. This afternoon, construction workers who heard the president's speech were impressed.
It was a good speech, covered a lot of pertinent issues today.
Scott Smith is a construction supervisor. A lot of his workers were told to stay home today without pay because of the president's visit. But the work and the pay will be made up later, and apprentice Mike Grzelnikoff says he never imagined he'd meet the president.
He's a great orator. I agree with everything he had to say.
The CEO of the company, also pretty happy.
It's a thrill. It really is, and it's a big inspiration. And it was just an incredible experience to walk with him and talk with him during the tour in Fab 1.
Solyndra says it'll be selling solar panels made at that new assembly line this fall. Today's Solyndra visit, also a bit of politics, and we'll be talking about that coming up on ABC 7 News at 6.
All right, Mark, thanks very much.
Okay, so here's our wonderful news about Solyndra. Yesterday, Zero Hedge contributor Bruce Crasting had some very insightful and very prophetic words when he asked rhetorically if a government investment disaster in the works. The company in question is now former massively subsidized solar energy company Solyndra. Solyndra filed for bankruptcy less than 24 hours after Bruce proposed that the company is nothing but a stimulus black hole. We congratulate him on his investigative efforts. Alas, being private, there was no way to short it and capitalize on this investigative coup de grace. And while there are no winners, there are plenty of losers. Who? Why, U.S. taxpayers, of course. Why? Because as some may recall, Solyndra is one of the shining examples of Obama's $787 billion American Recovery and Investment Act. After all, none other than President Obama said that Solyndra is leading the way toward a brighter and more prosperous future. He also cited it as a success story from the government's $787 billion economic stimulus package. Alas, Solyndra has now become a less than shining example of the complete catastrophe this latest exercise in pointless Keynesianism has been, all on the backs of U.S. taxpayers. But don't worry, Obama is about to bring us a fresh new fiscal stimulus catastrophe any minute. And then there's the story. So, sad and pathetic. I think the definition of insanity, as one person said, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The idea that the government can funnel money into some private company and expect that to result in jobs, and it's just absurd. It shows you the complete, utter intellectual and moral bankruptcy of this administration. It's just, it would be laughable if it weren't so sad. So I wanted to take you over to some better news, and this is an article that was linked also off of a commenter on Zero Hedge, and this is called Silver and the Single Dude. This is a important article in my mind. I'm going to skip some of the commentary because it's crass, but I'm going to read a bit of it here so you can see a little bit of how the non-silver users are beginning, or investors are beginning to see the silver story. So let's take a look at this story from the Single Dude Travel blog. Silver and the Single Dude. I'm the last guy that ever thought he'd write a financial article. But after hanging out with Boris and El Matador over the years, I've taken an increasing interest in the subject. These days, I never bother going to bleep movies like Avatar anymore because those unimaginative hacks in Hollywood just repackage the same tired story with the same talentless actors over and over. For me nowadays, my true entertainment is the slow-motion train wreck that is today's world financial system. I hope you had the time to read Boris's article on investing in gold when it came out. Since that article came out on July 8th, the price of gold has gone through the roof, from a little over $1,600 to a high of over $1,900, and is currently $1,833.70 at last check. I listened to Boris. Did you? Gold is not the only precious metal out there worth looking at as an investment for the single dude. Silver has also been long used as a basis for monetary systems and is much cheaper than gold at around $42 an ounce. Silver, for the most part, stayed put during this latest holy bleep historical rise of the price of gold. The reason gold is being bid up so high has to do with the world's growing distrust of the financial system and the growing possibility of extreme or hyperinflation of the US dollar and other major currencies. This is all largely due to the Fed manipulating interest rates to zero and printing money like a crack addict pawning his family's prized possessions. Gold bugs are seeing gold as a true way to store wealth while boycotting the crooked modern financial system. When the bleep hits the fan, as it inevitably will at some point, gold will still hold its value, while the US dollar will not be worthy of wiping your bleep with. So why is silver not joining gold in this meteoric rise? The reason is further proof that the free market, quote unquote, the politicians preach about as the supposed solution to all our problems does not actually exist. Quite simply, the whole silver market is being manipulated by the big bad guys, and the price of silver is being artificially held down. There's some pretty convincing proof in the numbers that the corporate bad guys are in fact holding down the silver price too. For example, look at the long interest versus the short interest in gold and silver. According to the excellent blog Silver Gold Silver, on the 20th of August, the long and short numbers on silver were as follows, and he gives the long and short numbers. So what that means is that the big banker guys are shorting gold and silver big time. These guys are not stupid. They know what a BS house of cards this economic mess we've created for ourselves is. It also is becoming more and more clear that the paper market for gold and silver has many, many more pieces of paper that purportedly represent gold and silver than the gold and silver that actually exists. There is enormous fraud in the gold and silver paper markets, and some suggest for every real gold ounce there are 20 or more fraudulent paper gold ounces traded in the market. This is why at Single Dude Travel we insist that your long-term investment strategy must require physical delivery of your precious metals. Make sure you can hold that bleep in your hands. And it goes on. He's kind of as crass and crude as Mr. Silver Gold Silver, who's covered in the Zero Hedge articles as he puts out new videos. But what's interesting about this is this is a kind of crude single man's guide to just stupidity and being a young fool, etc. But to see a person like this cover the silver story and actually report some of the facts is really shocking. How many people does this blog reach? I don't know. It may reach a lot, it may reach a few, but it's a kind of shift, because silver bugs traditionally are absolute gold bugs plus a conspiracy twist, and this is a new group of people, and it really is only going to take just a small awakening to get the type of event horizon event that I'm looking for in silver. So that's some good news. The jobs story is very depressing, that these government people would continue to go down this road that is an utter failure. But as you can see from the silver chart, silver is still healthy, and as an aside, the silver story in regards to the solar story is that it takes, I think the figure I read today was approximately 21 grams of silver for every solar panel. So solar seems to be a way of the future. I'm not sure how much the subsidy in China and the subsidy in America perverts that, if it's really a economically viable industry. But if it is, and if it's not, it seems that it's going to be a industry of the future, and it is an industry that uses a large amount of silver. So very bullish for silver, not so bullish for the United States, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out, and we'll talk to you next time.